What were my diaphragmatic endometriosis symptoms? 3 months ago, I had excision surgery to finally treat my endometriosis, which was diagnosed 9 years ago, and such treatment involved the excision of diaphragmatic endometriosis. Now, I've had symptoms for years, symptoms that were just brushed under the carpet by several NHS gynecologists, because I would describe them as this upper abdominal discomfort, pain that would usually interrelate with digestion. And the last time I spoke about it to a gynecologist at a BSGE accredited endometriosis centre in London, insisting upon investigation for thoracic endometriosis.
The doctor's response? The thing is, there could be a host of other reasons for why you experience those symptoms. They're not endometriosis related. Have you thought about taking antacids?
So of course, when my symptoms began to progress and I started to get right shoulder tip pain, I knew it was time to act, and to act fast. And that's when I began my pursuit of private healthcare, which went on to involve an MRI that finally picked up on suspected endometriosis lesions on my diaphragm. So what were my symptoms in the lead up to my surgery? I would say for the most part, for at least the past 5 years, I've suffered from upper abdominal symptoms to the point where they would even surpass my pelvic symptoms. Now, I'm speaking to symptoms that came up only during menstruation. I would have this upper abdominal swelling bigger than my pelvis. I've never really had an endo belly, so you can imagine my shock when my upper abdomen is swollen out under my boobs. It would be tender to touch, painful to touch, almost like it's bruised. If I eat certain foods that I can now decipher as acidic or inflammatory, which I could more or less get along with okay when not on my period, I would experience painful digestion, the bloating, acid reflux. There would be this burning sensation and even sometimes hiccuping too. So I always tied those symptoms to my digestion. I was convinced I had endometriosis on my stomach. And then about a year ago, I had maybe 1 or 2 only instances of breathlessness. So the most activity I will do on the first or second days of my period is to go out for a walk. I want to try and get some movement in at least. And I was struggling physically and with my breath. I've also previously experienced on 2 or 3 occasions rib pain, and in the lead up to my surgery I started to get the shoulder tip pain, and that's when I knew for sure that something was up. Even though technically speaking shoulder tip pain can result from upper GI tract issues. So it's the phrenic nerve that connects up to your neck, across your shoulder, down to your diaphragm. It also crosses path with the gallbladder, I believe. So people who have gallbladder issues or even some digestive issues, it's not uncommon to experience neck or shoulder tip pain. But of course, I noticed that this wasn't happening with digestion. I would wake up on day 1 and day 2 of my period, and I would wake up to my bleed and the shoulder tip pain. Typically one-sided. It would fluctuate, sometimes on the left, sometimes on the right. It would bounce back and forth, but predominantly on the right side, where I was found to have endometriosis. So as you can see, for the most part, touch wood, my symptoms haven't been linked to my breathing, to fatigue, to pneumothorax. So I've been very fortunate in that respect. But you tend to link those symptoms to diaphragmatic and thoracic endometriosis, when in reality, it can involve other symptoms like those I've described. You can have issues in your pelvis with your digestive tract, like colorectal endometriosis, which is very common, especially the rectosigmoid colon and the rectum, which can cause issues like constipation, and such issues down south can have an impact up above in the upper GI tract. So that is always a possibility. But the diaphragm sits above the digestive tract. It basically massages it as you breathe, as it goes up and down. So if you are suffering from cyclical symptoms around your upper abdomen, within your rib cage, or just underneath, that does warrant investigation for diaphragmatic endometriosis. So, have you experienced what you believe to be symptoms of diaphragmatic endometriosis? Have you had them investigated, or were you gaslit like I was for a number of years until I decided to go private? Let me know in the comments.